Well, Susan Smith is Liberal strategist, co-founder and principal at Blue Sky Strategy Group. Conservative strategist Cole Hogan, George Soule, former NDP Director of Communications, now founder and principal at On Step Strategies. All of them joining us in studio right now. Good to see all three of you.
Nice to see you, Michael.
Hello. So listen, let's begin with Mark Carney and you know, the doubling of the steel and aluminum tariffs, because you know the Prime Minister did get hammered for it in the House yesterday, accused of not being able to prevent it. His defense at the time was that he was involved in intensive discussions with the Americans, and now comes the news from the U.S. ambassador that talks are happening between Carney and Donald Trump. Is that enough then of a response from Trump, from Carney, to say that we're having these discussions, or does he need to do more in this moment to meet the challenge of this doubling of tariffs, Susan?
It's definitely a challenging moment, there's no question, but I think it's never beneficial to anyone in any negotiation, for any negotiation to happen in public, especially with Donald Trump. So I think Mr. Carney and his team, it's not just him and it's not just President Trump on the American side, are working very hard to resolve this trade issue that we have. It's difficult, there's no question. Industries are being impacted, but I think the government of Canada is definitely seeking resolution to this issue as quickly as they can. But coming out, punching back immediately when there are negotiations going on, I think we've all learned that's not a great way to handle Mr. Trump. Mr. Ford is speaking out, so you have someone who's making that kind of noise. But I think Mr. Carney and his team are doing what they can to actually get a deal done rather than grandstanding. Yeah,
Cole, what do you make? Enough of a response? Because, you know, I will say up against that are the concerns being expressed about tens of thousands of jobs on the line in a matter of days and weeks.
I think a few different things are at play here, and I agree with Susan that, you know, from the Liberal government standpoint, or anyone's standpoint in dealing with Donald Trump, you don't want to negotiate out in the open, in the public, or in the media. But I think there's been a slight bit of mixed messaging here, because we saw Mark Carney say, you know, we're not going to respond with retaliatory tariffs to Donald Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminum. And they said that they're going to find, Mark Carney said, we'll take some time, but not much, to see what we'll do in response to these tariffs. I don't know exactly what that means, but I imagine we'll find out shortly. Whereas we've seen Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, say, I'd like to respond with 25% tariffs in response to Trump's tariffs on aluminum and steel, to then, you know, not get steamrolled, in Doug Ford's words, during this process where Canada's negotiating with the United States. So I believe Mark Carney is suitable to deal with the relationship with Donald Trump, and I wish him the best of luck in doing so. But perhaps Doug Ford has a bit more direct experience in dealing with Trump and his administration.
George, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a simple answer to this, right? I think for sure I agree with Susan and Cole on, like, dealing with Donald Trump. You don't want to do it out in the open. Negotiations should happen at a table. You know, that's basic bargaining rules. And also with Donald Trump, you never know what you're going to get. So no matter how well things are going, who knows how he's going to react to that. So I want to give, you know, Mr. Carney a little bit of leeway. But I do think Mr. Carney needs to be careful with what he's doing with the rope that he's letting out, right? I mean, this campaign, he was elected for a very clear job, which was to negotiate with Donald Trump, period. Definitely made himself clear to be the best person for that during the campaign. He also talked about quick action. And I think on a number of issues, there's a whole lot of, like, things are going to happen as quickly as he's promised. And there's all kinds of excuses for that, and maybe some of them are legitimate, but I think at some point Canadians are going to say, hey, you're supposed to be the guy to get things done, and what's happening, right? I mean, you know, Gordie Howe was the original kind of elbows up in the corner, and the key with elbows up going into the corner for Gordie Howe was you come out with a puck. And so far, Mr. Carney hasn't come out with the puck at all.
Which actually also brings me to another topic I want to talk about, which is the First Minister's meeting, because I think it gets to what you're talking about. This promise from Mark Carney that things would be delivered or would be accomplished at a speed that Canadians have never seen before. And then you have this meeting of the First Ministers in Saskatoon. But despite this meeting, where I think some people thought some projects would be pointed out to kind of see where a strategy would roll out, instead we kind of get what we've heard since the start of this campaign, the promise to get rid of internal trade barriers, the fact that these projects would be getting up and rolling, and if there was anything new, perhaps just the reiteration that this group of First Ministers gets on better than the last grouping with Trudeau here in Ottawa. But is there pressure on Carney to deliver? Is he losing time here to deliver, given the expectations that he gave Canadians in the campaign, Susan?
No, I don't think so. I think I think the first minister's meeting was incredibly successful, especially given the temperature that it was going in, with Danielle Smith catering to or giving lots of oxygen to Alberta separatists. Mr. Carney walked away with the longest communique I've seen, with multiple levels of agreement. I was kind of trying to tally up the sectors of agreement, but they're going to speed up project approvals. They're going to work on labor market mobility. They're working to get decarbonized oil to Tidewater, essentially, and as well as clean energy projects. They're talking about highways, ports, airports, pipelines, nuclear projects. I mean, these are specific things, but every province has come with their own laundry list, and I think there's a bit of horse trading that has to happen. So I think Mr. Carney has brought people to the table. He's nobody has stormed away from the table, which I think, and we have to remember in Canadian politics, which is actually a good thing too. And I think there's an agreement to move things forward. And I do expect by Canada Day, we'll see the legislation get through the House of Commons for the federal areas on interprovincial trade barriers, and that will help improve the movement of things in our economy.
Cole, what do you think?
Yeah, all the right signals were sent at the first minister's meeting. All the premiers displayed a willingness to work with one another and with the prime minister. I think that's a good thing. But expectations were set sky high, right? Like there was the expectation of some sort of a list of nation-building energy projects to come out of the first minister's meeting, and that didn't happen. Meanwhile, we saw David Eby, the premier of British Columbia, say that he's not too keen on a new energy pipeline.
And he did not attend the first minister's meeting.
That's right.
But he was at a trade mission that had been long committed to.
He was the one that wasn't there. So, but that is a dissenting voice in this crowd of people. So we'll see, going forward, how Mark Carney and his government manages the premiers when the rubber hits the road with these nation-building energy projects.
George?
Yeah, I mean, look, I appreciate Susan's spin on this, but even her list, there's a whole lot of it talking and agreeing, which, under any other meeting, I would have said it was a great meeting. Right? I mean, these things didn't even happen under Harper for a long time. Justin Trudeau bragged about doing them and then gave up on them because he couldn't get people to get along. Like, it is very good news that folks are getting along. But you have Doug Ford saying that the federal government should give more love to the prairies. You have Danielle Smith giving a Liberal Prime Minister a little bit of credit because at least he's opening the door to things. Like, you have premiers trying very hard to get along, which is good news. But I agree with Cole. Mark Carney set the bar so high on this that even though under normal standards I would agree things are going well, he fell way, way short of any of the expectations that he set for himself, including right up to the beginning of the meeting. Like, there were no guarantees that came out of this. So I think, again, good work, great, but as far as the expectations he set, I think he's got to be careful because pretty soon people are going to, the honeymoon's going to wear out and he's going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I think the only people that are disappointed are pundits and journalists at this point. And when the premiers aren't walking away.
How dare you?
I think when the premiers are walking away, when there's continued agreement, come on, if you're going to build a nation-building project, it doesn't get approved in 10 minutes.
But Parliament only has a few more weeks left before they rise for summer. And, the whole point of the campaign was we're going to do this quickly, we're going to do this quickly. If they rise without something accomplished, internal, and that's just federal regulations. That's not really like across the whole country. That's just federal regulations.
Yeah, but the provinces would scream, Michael, if there was intrusion into provincial jurisdiction on things.
But this is the point, Susan. Everything is exactly under normal circumstances. Things are great. He promised to get things done between now and July 1st.
Okay, well, it's June 5th on my watch. There's still a few more days,
every week,
right?
Hopefully, so.
There's still a few more days. Look, yes, he said, I like the idea that you move fast and break things quickly. It's complicated in this country. We have multiple jurisdictions. No one government can slam anything through this country, and especially when you have to deal with Indigenous consultation and others.
Does he not then face the danger of failing up against the standard that he set and gave to Canadians?
But I mean, you have to at least give it a whirl, right? You're like, I might fail, so I'm not going to try, is not the way you lead a country. So I think with people still at the table, conversations still taking place. You heard Doug Ford. I mean, they were all there with a big, long laundry list of what each province and territory thought their nation-building project would be. There's not unlimited buckets of money for federal investment. Increased cooperation between the provinces will help remove some of the interprovincial trade barriers that the provinces deal with. The feds are going to work to reduce what they can. That's more that's been accomplished in the last, 60, 100 years. No one's ever been able to do that. So I think that's a good start, but it's not over. And he still has to move the bar. But it's it's naive for anyone to assume that a big long list is going to come out of the meeting and shovels are going to get in the ground right away.
I don't know if Canadians will agree with you on that statement. Maybe it's naive for journalists and pundits that watch it, but for Canadians who voted in a campaign, what do you say to that, Cole?
Well, they're going to want to see something happen sooner than later. And the thing is, someone in this process is going to be disappointed, whether it's like the premier of whatever province, they're going to want to see certain projects move, and especially if it goes over more than one province's jurisdiction. I think David Eby is the first piece to fall in that puzzle, because we'll see premier after premier say, well, this doesn't meet my expectations, and their local and provincial politics will play just as much of a part of it.
Well, and to that, even Danielle Smith, when she was pressed on it in Saskatoon, she said, because it wasn't a national pipeline, she's talking about the Western Arctic pipeline, asked about a national bitumen pipeline. She says, well, listen, I'm going to work with what I can work with right now, and that was Prince Rupert to Churchill. Whether or not that happens after what you're saying with Premier Eby, we're going to have to watch. But anyways, that is the time we have, sad to say. Journalists and pundits, how dare you?
Well, if only we could get potholes and highways built so quickly, right? Imagine getting a national project built quickly. Like, everybody at home knows it takes forever to get a pothole fixed on your street or to get a bridge built. When you're taking something across this country, it takes time and it takes cooperation.
If only Mark Carney had known that before he promised it.
We will watch. Susan, Cole, George, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.